This is my game, Deckmate, and I just released the biggest update that I've ever released. It's so big that the patch notes exceed Discord's limit for message length. But before I get into these changes, I want to talk a little bit about the project itself. For those of you that don't know, Deckmate is a project that I started about 2 years ago and have been making videos about for about a year and a half. I'm a solo game developer, and apart from the help from my Discord staff and community, which I definitely don't want to understate, I'm doing this project and these videos completely on my own. I started working on Deckmate around 2 months after first learning how to code in C#, which is a programming language that I've now been using practically every day for the past 2 years. Deckmate started as a simple concept, to combine chess with a card game. In about 8 months, I had a functional prototype, although I definitely use the term functional loosely. Since I was making a game that consisted of cards that modified how an otherwise standard game of chess played out, the code that I wrote for this prototype was basically just a very expandable version of chess. So I decided to pivot to creating simpler chess variants. The first was chess versus checkers, then isometric chess, then circular chess, which got the most attention by far. I disabled the buggy prototype of the original mode so that I could focus on making these variants as good as they could be. And while I definitely will be reintroducing this concept, that's how it remains today. I've built an amazing community of chess variant players, including a dedicated group of competitive circular chess players. I'm funded entirely from YouTube ad revenue and fan funding. Although it isn't quite sustainable yet for the long term, I'm earning enough to keep this project going thanks to my viewers and channel members. If you'd like to join this list, a channel membership is a great way to support the project. Members get priority access to play against me in videos and live streams, a custom badge next to your name, and emotes to use in my comment section in live chat, along with access to a members-only channel in the Discord server, and the occasional members-only community post on YouTube. Deckmate is, and always will be, a free-to-play game. I'm planning on adding paid cosmetics and extra features once the game goes into early access in the distant future, but I expect that a majority of my income will still be from YouTube. So thank you for making this possible. Now let's take a look at the patch notes for beta version 1.7. First off, I've added 2 new game modes, the chess randomizer and square chess. I know, shocking. Square chess includes normal old chess, along with a handful of custom board sizes and positions that I featured in my videos. The chess randomizer has been the subject of some videos as well. If you haven't watched those, the way it works is that you first roll for a separate length and width for the board, both of which can be between 5 and 10 squares. Then pawns are placed on the second rank, and the back rank is decided randomly. There will be exactly 1 king, but all of the other squares will have either a rook, bishop, knight, or queen selected at random, with the queen being half as likely to be selected. Castling is never allowed, but the rules are otherwise the exact same as standard chess. Pawns are always able to move 2 squares on their first move, and a pawn can always promote to any of the 4 usual pieces when it reaches the other side of the board. There are over 20 million possible starting positions, so every game is practically guaranteed to be unique before the first move is even played. Now let's go over the new features. First up, I've added local multiplayer. This is available for every game mode, and works exactly as you would expect it to. You can play against yourself or anyone else on one computer. There's also a new settings menu with a new look and some new customization options. The biggest change by far is the ability to use a 2D board. You were previously only able to use a 3D board, which was a design decision that I made for the original game mode, but a 2D board is what a lot of players prefer for online chess. Also, the 3D models aren't exactly optimized, so this will also make the game run much smoother for people with non-gaming PCs. You can also customize the board and background colors. There are 5 options for board colors, and you can choose between the game mode's default color and 3 neutral colors. I've also added onboard notation for circular, hexagonal, and square chess, so that it's easier to calculate and discuss positions. Next up is one of the most suggested features by far, which is the board editor. You can now set up, save, and play custom positions in every game mode. This works exactly as you'd expect it to. You can drag pieces from the left side onto the board to place them, drag pieces off the board to delete them, manage which color's turn it is to move, and castling rights. Then you can press save, then load the position into a private or local game. You may also notice this use restore point button. This is similar to how a custom position works, but these only save when an online game ends prematurely, either by having a player leave or the lobby itself crashing. Restore points save player names, the board position, and clock info, so that you can continue the position from right where you left off if something goes wrong. There's also an experimental opening explorer for circular chess. The competitive circular chess community has also voted on a new starting position, which I'll touch on later, so this data is already irrelevant, but I'm leaving it in the update as a proof of concept. This works just like the opening explorers on the popular chess sites, where you can sift through common positions and see how often the position has occurred in the competitive database, along with the win rates for each color. There are a few final additions that I'll go over quickly. I've added a flip board button, which does what it says, an in-game material counter, the ability to view your opponent's possible moves by holding shift and clicking on a piece, and a match score indicator. This displays the score on the end screen after each game, and will appear on the main UI during the game when the second consecutive game in a single lobby begins. So that's about it for the new features. There are also a few major changes coming to Deckmate's existing game modes. The game mode getting the most changes by far is chess versus checkers. I outlined the changes in a previous video, but I'll go over them again in case you haven't seen it. I've changed the starting position, giving the checkers 4 rows of 8 instead of 3 rows of 10. The goal behind this is to suffocate the chess pieces a bit earlier and to make the edges a bit safer for the checkers, so that a knight can't safely jump in and take these checkers. There's also a new rule that I'm affectionately calling en diamant, which is French for in diamond. Basically, it prevents the chess pieces from barricading in these diamond formations, which would usually render the chess pieces completely uncapturable from the checkers. With en diamant in play, a checker will be able to capture any piece that is part of a diamond formation. These changes still don't quite do enough to balance chess versus checkers, so I'll keep trying to come up with subtle rule changes that balance the game without taking away too much of the spirit of both games. As a final note for this mode, the extra blue squares are now invisible unless they are either occupied or if a capture is available that would leave a checker on it. I've also changed the notation so that the main board's notation is the same as it would be without the blue squares. To make this work, the leftmost file is now the Z file, and the bottom rank is rank 0. As I mentioned earlier, the circular chess community has voted on a new starting position. I was hoping that the previous position would be the final change, but it made promotions way too hard to stop. It was decently balanced between white and black, but the game just didn't feel very dynamic. This new position was proposed by Lolo, who some of you might recognize as the guy who has literally won every single standard chess arena that he has participated in on my live streams. This position brings back an idea from my Circular Chess 2.0 video, where there were 8 knights in the center. I went down to 4 knights after making other adjustments to the board, but after a small test tournament, the community agreed that 8 knights led to much more interesting positions. This will be the last change to the starting position, I promise. Okay, now time for a less exciting change. I removed both isometric chess and hide-and-seek chess from the main version of Deckmate. They will both be back at some point, with hide-and-seek chess coming back to Deckmate, and isometric chess becoming its own game in the not-so-distant future, as I first announced at the beginning of this year. Every game mode in Deckmate runs off of the same main code, and these modes were different enough from the others that I had to add a bunch of extra code, which was starting to cause problems. Removing them will help me focus on making the existing modes as good as they can possibly be. Until isometric chess comes out, these modes will be playable on the previous version of Deckmate as part of the new Legacy branch, which you can access by right-clicking on the game in your Steam library, going to Properties, then Betas, then selecting the Legacy branch. I also completely reworked the game's netcode so that it should hopefully be easier to get into lobbies and it should hopefully crash less. The original netcode was literally me trying to figure out the Steam API while learning to use it for the first time, so the second version should be a lot better. Also, of course, there's a completely updated UI, as you've been seeing throughout this entire video. There's also a slight improvement to the circular chess bot, although this one has been on the experimental branch for a while now. It fixes some situations where the circular chess bot didn't quite know the rules in certain situations, and since a bot's strength can be very sensitive to these little bugs, you may notice a pretty decent improvement in the bot's strength, but it's still not going to be as good as the best human players. I've also fixed some important bugs, including one that I'm not super sure about because I was not able to reliably replicate the bug, but some players were running into a bug where it wouldn't let them promote against the bot, effectively freezing the game. I think I fixed this, but I'm not exactly sure, so I'll be watching this closely. There's also a bug in hexagonal chess where pinned pieces could move freely, and a weird one that kept a king from approaching a knight. Again, these have both been on the experimental build for a while now, but in 1.7, they're officially on the main build. And finally, I fixed a few bugs that would cause an incorrect end condition to be displayed, like declaring a checkmate instead of stalemate, or giving the win to the wrong player. Hopefully all of those should be sorted out. Also, if you're watching this video within the first few hours, I am probably currently live streaming. I'll be playing Deckmate against viewers starting at noon Eastern time, which is 30 minutes after this video goes live. I'll be selecting a random viewer for each game, and they'll be able to pick which mode we play. It'll be a lot of fun, so I hope to see you there. Once again, huge thanks to my channel members for making this possible. I'd also like to thank the people in my Discord community that I selected to test this update to make sure it was the best that it could be. There were some funny game-breaking bugs that might still exist without their help, so I can't thank them enough. I'm excited to see what the future holds for this channel and for Deckmate. I'm extremely dedicated to my goal of making this my full-time job, and I hope you guys will stick around to see this journey unfold. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.